All right.
Why did you wear the same shirt as me?
What?
Neil, it's not the same shirt exactly, but come on.
Come on.
Coordination. Where's the wardrobe? Wardrobe fell down the job here. Jeez, it's very hard to get good people.
Well, we're communists, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I've been called a tanky, commie, lefty, libtard all week long. Again. Yeah. Last week I was a fascist, a Duganite, neo-fascist, Trump MAGA bastard.
Wow.
And the next one, a week later, is like the polar opposite.
What's a tanky?
Do you know what I know I have to look it up actually. A tanky is, it's funny, it must be boomer types going with that slur. Tanky is it was a derogatory term for a commie. Back in the day, so pre 9/11. Tankies. Don't even understand it, but there you go.
Right.
Whole slur this week. And why? Because, once again, whenever Israel acts, the left-right culture war split goes all kaflooey. The signals are distorted. And it settles down again, which it will again next week, back into will be far right. But whenever Israel acts and does something, it goes, whoosh, the signals. And so if you say anything remotely like against Israel's line, which was that the so-called pager attacks in Lebanon were nothing but precise humanitarian terrorist targeting acts of, in fact, munificence, in fact, benevolence on the Israelis' part. Anything less deviating from that official MSM Global Media Party line is your terrorist-supporting, Hamas-loving, commie tanky pinko, etc., etc. So
it's a bit of a...
We've seen it a few times since October 7th, but the issue is Israel and or the Jews.
Everybody loves Israel.
Not everybody, but
everybody's meant to love Israel.
Someone who is on your team on 9 out of 10 issues the rest of the week on trans ideology, on going after kids and sexualizing them, on Trump versus the CIA, on the Ukraine war, etc., on Big Pharma, on COVID machinations, on... Machinations. I prefer the hard C. Do I have to say it like that? Okay, machinations. They're with you 9 out of 10, and then Israel, and they just... The fangs come out, and it's like... But it's mutual. They think we're nuts. We think they're nuts. Never the two shall meet. It's a bizarre thing. But it just goes to show you can't really have a team. You can pretend that you're all on the same team, but
Yeah.
by Friday you won't be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a shit show, really. Nobody makes any sense, and I suppose it makes sense. Makes sense to themselves, and they everybody's point of view has validity, I suppose. There's poltergeist in the back there.
What do you see?
I don't know, poltergeist.
Is it a really tall Sasquatch looking thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, because like back in the good old days, the far right, right wingers didn't like Israel. I mean, it's not that they didn't like Israel because they didn't like the Jews. The Jews. But
Yeah.
today, apparently, especially in America and the West, anyway, if you're far right, you love Israel because today far right is also anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant, right? And the immigrants are all Muslims apparently, which is not really the case, but it'll do, right? As a general.
Shorthand, yeah. Post 9/11.
They're all Muslim.
Yeah.
It's 9/11. People are having
The two were blended.
Yeah, people are still stuck in the past. A lot of right wing Republican types are still all caught in on the day of 9/11. Basically, they're stuck in the immediate post 9/11 era when it was those damn Muslim whatever ragheads, whatever they call them. They attacked us, and therefore Israel is defending us. So that's a hangover, and supposedly they kept that going. Of all the things that kind of shifted and changed over the years, the anti-Islam thing, anti-Muslim thing among Christians, Western Christians, never went away. So ultimately, it's still a religious war for those people,
Yeah. Well, it's programming.
It's not just religion, it's about freedom and democracy, right? And it's programming, right? It's
programming. They weren't paying attention then, so it was all laid down deep. Terror attack after terror attack, year after year.
The Muslims are all basically, they're all dictatorships, right? And that's antithetical to the American way of life and stuff. So that's on first, really, So if you have to, when you boil it down, you have to separate things out. Yeah, we're still anti-Islam, anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, and therefore we're pro-Israel.
Yeah. There's something. It's something complex to it. It's not even easy because there's an apparent wide apparent anti-authoritarianism in the pejoratively described far right, which is actually a large mass of people, and it's showing up in Western election results, okay? And they're going against what appears to be a full spectrum government media campaign against them and anything they tweet, or they're getting arrested for it. In England, they're going to jail, some people, And so it seems to be quite clearly drawn there. It's people against those in power.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a complicating thing where some of those same people, Israel acts, and they don't need to be subject to 24-hour, 48 hours of a news barrage to flip. They instantaneously have Israel's take on it, support it. They're not subject to a barrage that they see through eventually. That's their side.
Yeah, because
it's remarkable because
that's what I'm saying. It's been there since forever. I mean, it was really solidified after 9/11, but it's ideological in terms of freedom and democracy, and Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East, and also Israel is the founder of Judeo-Christianity, right? They were on first supposedly. So on those two major fronts, political ideology and religious belief, then they're that's why they're all fully supportive of Americans. Are all most Americans, especially American right wingers who tend to be more religious than lefties, are fully in support of Israel. Because you have to choose who you're going to choose. It's not a mystery, right?
Yeah.
Take your average American conservative and say Israel or raghead, Muslim, dictatorship. Which do you go for?
Well, my issue I was going to develop was what happens to the anti-authoritarianism, because now you're going with the authorities like that. The authority is telling you support Israel and don't say anything critical of them.
But conservatives aren't anti-authority.
Yeah.
That's maybe more libertarian you're thinking of, but the average conservative isn't anti. They don't want a smaller government and all that kind of stuff, but they still want government, They still respect authority. They realise they need authority. Well, God's also their highest authority, but below that then is government, As long as you've got the right person in government, as long as you've got a Christian leader in government, then it's all good in America. And of course, he's going to support Israel.
Yeah. Did you this thing Israel did? Is it? It's without precedent, right? I mean, didn't remind you of anything
on the scale.
Yeah.
On that scale, yeah.
It's usually
they've done similar things before, and it's it's part of the textbook. It's part of the it's spycraft. It's pretty standard spycraft, right? Blowing up electronic devices, or Israel has done it before, targeting Hamas members and Hezbollah members individually. But so I suppose it was natural for them to go, hey, we could go big time with this. We could go full spectrum with this,
like 4,000 times.
Yeah. Well, it's just a matter of scale. If it works once, it works with, it'll work with. I mean, it's pretty complicated actually, and they got a lot of kudos and stuff. They got a lot of props, from the West, especially conservative. But even CNN and all those people they're not really left leaning. They all love Israel. Even the one that supposedly comes in for criticism because of its coverage of Israeli, politics or Israeli actions, like the BBC, they're still uber supportive of Israel. So yeah, they loved it. I thought it was awesome, and it was obviously complicated and pretty nefarious and cunning and devious and that kind of thing. I don't know if they're all positive things. I suppose they are in war, in a certain sense, but they got big props in the Western media for doing that. To the point that they're saying, they're so smart and so intelligent and all that kind of stuff. They're so basically they're so cunning, and this is a real master stroke, to be able to do this. And it's like everybody's in awe of their ability to organize this. Probably, allegedly took, was in the planning for like 15 years, whatever had, and probably makes you wonder what else they have. They've been planning this kind of thing for 15 years, just waiting for the right time to implement it. So they're nothing if they're not. Conscientious about their.
Can we address what was the scale of this? And because people are tweeting, well, they could blow up anything anywhere, and that's why they have so many people in thrall. Pagers one day, then radio/walkie-talkies the next, but lots of tweets claiming laptops, solar panels, home security systems, mobile phones. Is it that diverse?
Don't know. It's hard to get specific information on what else blew up or whether it was. But the question there is the pagers were obviously that's pretty clear in terms of how that was done at this point. Although not in all the specific details, but certainly they had a front company in Hungary, and as much as we like Orban, he's a uber Israel firster. So Hungary is a kind of a safe place for Israeli types, intel types, and Jews in general to operate.
And that
so they had a front company in Hungary that just basically acted as, it was just one of several that were involved in it. We don't know all the details, obviously. We have no details about that one. BAC Consulting in Hungary was just a front company. It didn't really exist. And it was just designed to do what it did, which was to get the licensing information and the license to manufacture these in Europe for customers in Europe, so it was kind of offshored in that sense, the company in Taiwan had offshored, outsourced, sorry, the manufacture of a certain number of these for European, Middle Eastern market or whatever to this company BAC, and so they that was just to get the schematics and that kind of thing to actually build it, to make it look legit, because obviously these things,
a total facsimile, but for an explosive
so that
added to it.
Yeah, so then
physically,
the Mossad themselves, or some company or some people working with them, basically made thousands of these and put explosives in them, and then waited for the right moment when Hezbollah would make the order, and they segued them in there to that order, and who knows, probably maybe months ago, who knows exactly how long, we don't know those details either, how long ago they were actually bought, but certainly quite a while ago, and then they waited until the right moment. And the right moment was meant to be when Israel would do what it's kind of started doing, although maybe they had planned something bigger, who knows, whatever, or maybe it's the way it's panned out over the past few days, where they're just bombing different sites in southern Lebanon. At that point, they would choose a moment to detonate these pagers and walkie-talkies in order to hobble Hezbollah's ability to coordinate and all that kind of stuff. Be a part of the campaign, basically. But allegedly, they had to bring it forward because they did it in advance of that, 2 or 3 days at least in advance of any. And we don't even know if what they've done over the past few days since that, in terms of the air raids and stuff, if that was actually the plan all along. But the idea is that they had to do it in advance because they got word that they were going to be found out, and Hezbollah was going to get rid of these pagers and walkie-talkies. So they had to, before the word actually spread officially, they had to just use them, use it or lose it type thing. We put all this effort into doing it. Why don't we need to use it? So let's do it, and then we'll bring forward our planned. We'll have to expedite our planned operation against Hezbollah, which they've started over the past few days. But like I said, again, we don't know to what extent they bring the forced use of the walkie-talkie element and the pager element in some way through a monkey wrench in the works there of the original plan.
Of a plan.
So you could look at it as a bit of a fuck up for Israel in a certain sense, although
15 years. Oh, where did you get 15 years? It
was from some source, basically, with knowledge of the.
It could took that kind of long term. That seems like a lot to invest in something that was.
Been planning it for 15 years.
Like a scatter shot. I mean, unless they're confident that these were used by Hezbollah.
Exactly, it's difficult.
Activists.
It's difficult,
They're claiming a victory propaganda-wise, but we know there were 2 kids killed. We know people in the shopping lines were injured.
Yeah, it was very dangerous, obviously, to members of the public.
They can't be Hezbollah.
But Israel doesn't care, about civilian casualties, obviously. Given that they've killed.
So if they injured
7 or 8,000,
if they injured 700 or 800 actual useful people in the Hezbollah organization, that's worth it for the other 4,000 injuries. Okay,
sure.
But I suppose the question I'm skirting around is, you've described a nuts and bolts mechanism here where they set up a supply chain to go about this, where they could actually physically add explosives and then pre-test them themselves, be confident that the signal will be received and that they go off at the allotted time and so on. The other stuff, though, I mean, is there a whole series of supply chains, laptops, solar panels, home security systems?
Well, that's
because the fear people are worried about is that they have some digital signals-based way to blow up the laptop in front of us right now.
No.
We don't like what they're saying. Do it. You know what I mean?
That's kind of like
People are freaking out, but that's part of the terror factor.
Well, yeah, but it's not realistic. Really,
technologically, no.
I mean, no. I mean, you're selling. No. I mean, people brought up the possibility that this brings up the possibility that all the Chinese smartphones that people are walking around with, could all be laced with whatever. Could be laced with, I don't know, anything from explosives to fried rice to chop suey, whatever. They could have put whatever they want in it, the listening devices, all that kind of stuff, and it all goes back. It goes up. The Chinese smartphones, all that information goes up to the Chinese cloud, supposedly. People are talking about all sorts of crazy stuff, And,
that wouldn't be my first concern. My first concern would be...
Well, that'll be your downfall, not being
how many
suspicious enough of the Chinese.
Israeli-made Intel chips are in everything? That's what would be my first... I'd be concerned about the Western systems.
Yeah.
The Chinese ones.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. But Chinese is a useful distraction. The Chi-Coms thing is a useful distraction, has been in the US for a long time, effectively interesting, it diverts away from the reality that we would have subscribed to, which is that, like you just said, it's more Western intel operations that people in the West should be concerned about. They're your real enemy in a certain sense in that respect. And so they've been talking about TikTok and all that kind of stuff, and the Chinese infiltration of the US, and they've talked about Chinese smartphones before now and all that stuff. So the fact that that's a distraction is and who it's a distraction from has been exposed or shown for anybody who's able to see it by this pager business, that the Chinese haven't blown up any cell phones, any Chinese cell phones or any Chinese pagers or anything like that in America, but the Israelis have. Of course, they did it against Arabs, so that's okay. Mm-hmm. But in terms of means, motive, and opportunity, the only one who has proven themselves with all of those three things so far has been the Israelis. So if you really want to be concerned about something blowing up in your hand, some technological device blowing up in your hand, well, then you should be concerned about Israel and, by extension, Western intelligence agencies, not Chinese or any others. Until your Chinese smartphone blows up, and it's not a big explosion, but it kind of blows up, and out of it comes like a little Chinese flag comes out of it and waves like that. Until that happens,
and a victory song plays.
Yeah, a victory song. Yeah, and
the Internationale,
and a picture of our great leader.
You're all communists now.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I thought it was very anti-Semitic though just to viewing the response from the Western media to the pager and walkie-talkie event, the way that they were portraying this event and the way they were portraying the Israelis, they weren't just skirting close to anti-Semitism. It was full-blown anti-Semitism, if you ask me. I was quite horrified by it, to be honest, because the very clear implication was that Jews are smart. They're super smart.
Yeah, they were gushing a bit too much.
Look how super smart those Jews are to do this, and wow. And that's an anti-Semitic trope, you know what I mean? Saying that the Jews are smart.
And cunning, I know.
Yeah. So, but nobody came down on them for it, though. Surprisingly. Strange.
Yeah. But where's the ADL when?
But everybody, they're off the leash. Like, there's this woman. What's her name? Deborah Lipstadt. She's an Uber Jew.
ADL.
She was a Biden administration official. I don't know if she still is. But this is a kind of love-in. She was she was a diplomat. What was her diplomatic? She was the U.S. anti-Semitism envoy. So you can imagine where she's coming from. She was considered for an ambassadorship position at the Office to Monitor and Combat Anti-Semitism in the Biden administration. Biden named her for this role. Yeah, she was part of the Biden administration team that launched the U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. With anti-Semitism being, people protesting about Israel. The uptick in anti-Semitism being people protesting in Western countries and particularly in the US about Israel slaughtering innocent people. That's anti-Semitism. That's the uptick in anti-Semitism. Anyway, this is her at a love-in for, I don't know, some Jewish group love-in or something. Anyway, have a quick listen. Just the first bit, actually.
After October 7th, there was a feeling around the world that Israel is weaker. And in the
You want a beeper?
I can give you a few.
Okay, we can stop it there. Yeah, you see what provokes a not really veiled threat to blow you up?
If you just suggest
Israel
that the optics may be that Israel looks
Israel
weaker.
might look... Do you think Israel looks weak? I'm going to kill you.
She's really sensitive to anti-Semitism.
Did you say that Israel might look weak as a result of anything it does? I'm going to have Mossad blow you up. So that's supposed... She's a diplomat. Was a diplomat chosen by Biden administration. So it's that kind of mentality, you know. These are our great leaders, right? These are people we're meant to look up to. These are people that are making decisions or forming policy and all that kind of stuff. And so, I don't know. What do you say to that, you know? You just go, well, they're all...
Yeah, there was someone else. There was a Republican congresswoman, Jewish American, responding to a protester in DC or something down the street. Said something similar. You got a pager or something?
Yeah, it's been on Twitter as well. Like, anybody who says anything about the paging event on Twitter, anybody of note was accosted by random Jews on Twitter saying, you know, paging, and then they put your name in. Right. Just as a response, you know, the response tweet would be paging you paging your name. Yeah, they like the idea, but then, I mean, is that any different from the way the Americans acted after 9/11? If any, you know, towards anybody sympathetic to Arabs or Muslims or whatever who are being bombed in Iraq, whatever. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of that went on. Like, it's not a mentality that's unique to the Jews, right? It's just it's a mentality that exists among human beings who are
sensitive.
Just sensitive beings. Yeah, they're just very sensitive people. Yeah, they're so sensitive that if you offend them in any way, they'll kill you. Speaking, I just came across this. Just as since we're kind of talking about hypocrisy here, right? Like raging, screaming hypocrisy. Here's Barack Obama in 2008 talking about Hillary Clinton and guns. Now, you might have thought that Hillary was very much anti-gun, right? You may have got that impression.
Mm-hmm.
Well, have a listen.
I expected this out of John McCain. But I've got to say, I'm a little disappointed when I start hearing the exact same talking points coming out of my Democratic colleague, Hillary Clinton. She knows better. She knows better. Shame on her. Shame on her. She knows better.
I agree. Shame on her.
She's running around talking about how this is an insult to sportsmen. How she values the Second Amendment. She's talking like she's Annie Oakley.
Get your gun.
Hillary Clinton's out there, you know, like she's out in the duck blind every Sunday. She's packing a six-shooter. Come on. She knows better. That's some politics being played by Hillary Clinton. I want to see that picture of her out there in the duck blind. You know, come on.
Come on now.
Come on, man. That's where Joe Biden got that from.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Barack
I'll
would,
be like Barack, and I'll be in prison.
Barack would know about
Legally. Yeah.
about women packing. No?
Oh, Jesus, Joe.
He'd have
The joke comes at the end of the show.
He'd have intimate knowledge of women packing things.
Packing heat.
Packing 6-shooters.
I think I know why that's doing rounds again. I was going to bring this up later, but Kamala Harris, as you know, has been getting a lot of flack for basically doing no interviews whatsoever. Well, she did one this week. She went on Oprah Winfrey show. Should have been a breeze. You know, Oprah Winfrey's obviously on her side because you just have to just relax, shoot the breeze with us. This is what happened. I hope you can play the video on this. This is RT's write-up of it. So I'll just introduce it first. The girl here with her mother, her name's Natalie, I think. She's 15 years old. She just survived and been wounded in a high school shooting. I forget where. It's mentioned in the article. So she was one of Oprah's guests. She gives an emotional account of her story, what just happened to her like the week before. And her mother pleads with Kamala, can we maybe do something in politics, keep the guns out of schools, good, easy political material there for a Democrat candidate to work with. Now listen to Kamala's response.
Those people are suffering like I'm suffering. I'm very sorry for them. I'm very sorry that they lost their loved ones.
And you have a message for the people in power.
Yes, the people in power. Let's make it a change. Let's make it happen. Let's make, let's just not hear about this. Who wants to just hear about this? We gotta change it. We gotta make it happen.
These are just common sense. These are just common sense.
I thought it was so powerful at the convention when you said you have guns. No, at the debate.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot. Sorry.
Yes. I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
Nope.
But my staff will deal with that later.
Yeah.
She is nuts.
Like, it's set up here on a plate. Oprah didn't help now by bringing up that she had previously mentioned being a gun owner, but Jesus Christ, woman. So, yeah, the same thing as Hillary. If somebody gets in my house, I'm a gun owner, I'm going to shoot him. But outwardly, usually, she forgot herself here, but that's all Trump supporters, right? Who own guns. Hypocrisy.
Yeah.
There's people are wondering if she's drunk or drinks a lot or something. It's just that kind of
Drunk in the
insensitivity, that's more like psychopathy. That's maybe she had some self-awareness that she said, I probably shouldn't have said that. My staff will deal with it later, but she still cackled.
Yeah, she can't help herself. It's actually a medical condition,
Laughing inappropriately.
Paradoxical laughter, it's called. Exaggerated expression of humour which is unwarranted by external events. It is associated with mental illness, such as mania, hypomania, schizophrenia, schizoidal personality disorder. Paradoxical laughter is indicative of an unstable mood often caused by pseudobulbar effect, which can quickly change to anger and back again on minor external cues. And that's something that which is totally believable as well. She had, in her term as vice president,
Her staff turnover was
it was
super
crazy.
high.
Just people couldn't handle her.
6 months and they're gone.
It's emotional incontinence.
Okay, well that isn't psychopathy.
Huh? It's probably, it's character
It's
of
some character disturbance, yeah.
There's a spectrum there of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
So, and apparently the only remedy for it is to be pushed off a cliff. So,
Well, it would stop the laughter.
where's the doctors?
They wouldn't be laughing after that.
Intercede here and cure Kamala. Yeah.
Speaking of throwing off throwing people off a height. Number of videos have surfaced such that even the BBC objectively reported this as fact. Which, of course, the righties will say, "Oh, you see, BBC's Hamas and lefty." Well, it was egregious, and the videos went viral. So this is one of them, of the IDF throwing Palestinians off rooftops. I think in Gaza, but not necessarily. I think one is from the West Bank. Can't remember how brutal it. Oh, it's from a distance at least. There's some suggestion he'd already been shot. This guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one though I've seen where the guy being thrown off the rooftop. He's dead, I think, already. You can see he doesn't. But there's someone else who falls head first and puts their arms out. So he was still alive. What I don't get is with the righties obviously took the whole global war on terror and ISIS to heart. And one of the things that was drummed into them was ISIS throws people off rooftops.
Mm-hmm.
So when they see that, is there nothing in the brain that the neuron of the ISIS memory and rooftops and the IDF one next to it, do those neurons not connect?
Yeah. Well, those guys, ISIS were throwing gays off the rooftop. At least that was the meme, or the
Right.
the news bite that went out was it was the gays, right, and that's meant to, jerk your
Western values
Western
change.
values
Yeah,
change.
but here there's, well, I suppose the IDF would probably say they were terrorists.
I wrote like years ago an articles about the SAS and stuff, and I think it was in we call that place over there, Myanmar. Is it Myanmar?
Post World War II,
Yeah.
the British in Burma, yeah,
In Burma and Myanmar and stuff, and
they were
and
chopping heads.
Yeah, there's pictures of British soldiers with the heads of the people they're fighting against, in their hands, So, I don't know. Unless you pay attention, unless you know the history of that kind of thing and how warfare has gone through. Unless if you were just born yesterday, like, forget about it. You're a victim. Born yesterday, but I mean, you may as well have been born yesterday in terms of what you know about history. Then you're just a victim for Western propaganda. You'll just absorb all of it, and you'll have nothing, no context in which to place it, or no way to counter it, or whatever, in terms of truthifying it or understanding it. So you'll be played like a violin, So, yeah. But the Israelis, I don't know. It's hard to know what's going on.
On Lebanon, there have been a series of airstrikes. One of them was intense to some extent. I think 100 strikes, multiple Israeli jets. It's interesting that it gives away that Lebanon has no air defense. But we've already known that because the Israelis for years have been flying jets via Lebanon to target Syria.
Yeah.
Hezbollah surely would have shot them down if they could.
Right.
But they never could.
Well, surely, don't know.
Okay, maybe not. But then now, surely, we respond.
Yeah.
Lebanon's non-Hezbollah PM declares Lebanon's at war. So Hezbollah, it's yours. You've just got the green light from the others in your coalition government in the non-Hezbollah, non-Shiite Lebanon. Let's do it. As yet, there's a few counterstrikes, a lot more targeted. But and Hezbollah has been targeting Israeli military installations all along northern Israel since October 7th. So I guess it's just, for now, Hezbollah is just stay the course. Don't do anything rash yet. Don't go massive yet. But there is in the meantime, there is an increase in Israeli airstrikes in the other direction. Is it the same old we've seen since October 7th? Israel would love to goad Hezbollah / Lebanon as a whole into going massive. Therefore, they can show the world, look,
If Lebanon's
come help us.
If Lebanon's at war, where's the 80,000 members of the Lebanese army? the known Hezbollah Lebanese army. Shouldn't they be on manoeuvres, or shouldn't they be gearing up for? I suppose they're waiting. I mean, Israel obviously, they're not at war, right? When somebody bombs you, technically you're at war, but practically you're not at war, right? Depends what you mean by at war. When Israel flies X number of sorties and drops a bunch of bombs on different sites that they claim are Hezbollah launch sites, Mossad launch sites, whatever, and then just fly back home, and there's no incursion across the border, there's no massive Israeli troops or tanks crossing the border, then there's no one to fight against, right? You don't have any air defense. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to send a few rockets back into Haifa like they did this morning, and that's it. Is that war? Is that at war? Technically,
Yeah.
but practically, so you have to define your terms, I feel like Jordan Peterson here, you know what I mean? Or Bill Clinton, even worse. What do you mean by
Right.
what do you mean by at war? But obviously you can take that to extremes, but it is very useful, or it's necessary in a lot of cases when you just throw around these terms like, we're at war. What do you mean? So, yeah, and this is the one thing you notice. I mean, they had a free reign in Gaza, to a large extent, a free reign in Gaza, although they didn't go as they expected, I'm sure. They had free reign to invade Gaza with their tanks and their soldiers, although they were quite cautious about that because they don't want too many Israeli boys coming home in body bags. But they're very cautious about. I mean, it's definitely a decision, especially in light of 2006 and what happened back then, where Israel technically lost the war when they invaded Lebanon in 2006. So a lot of thought goes into it, and the optics and all that kind of stuff. Nobody wants to be seen to lose, As we talked about that vis-a-vis Ukraine with Russia and the West. Nobody wants to be seen to lose. Of course, practically you would lose as well, and there would be real-world implications for that. But almost as bad as actually losing is being seen to lose. Because then you're a big, major loser, and nobody wants to do business with you anymore. So Israel is very cautious, yeah. And so are they just going to... They have a few options. They can just continue these bombing runs, and hopefully achieve something, but they're not going to achieve anything. But, I mean, the official stated goal now that they just pushed into the overall war objectives was to repatriate i.e. put the people back into villages, 60,000 people into villages in the north of Israel that have been evacuated from there over the past 8, 9, 10 months since October 7th. So for the Israelis, that's something. I mean, they didn't say much about it. You didn't really hear much about it. I mean, it was referenced here and there, but it wasn't a big issue in a certain sense. It was just security measures, remove them from these villages that are close to the Lebanese border, so in case they get missiled. But now it's pushed up the agenda, and maybe because who knows? And I mean,
there could be internal pressure. Those 60,000 want back.
Yeah,
they want to go home.
Well, they do, yeah, but I'm sure they don't want to go home under.
Right, so they'd like this dealt with as soon as possible.
Yeah,
and the Israeli plan is pretty well stated. They want to push. They want the border moved all the way up to the river, Litani River.
Yes, which is about you're talking maybe about 20 kilometres, a buffer zone of say 20 kilometres. But to do that, there's a lot of villages and towns in southern Lebanon there. So in order to quote unquote push Hezbollah back, how are you going to do that? How are you going to differentiate Hezbollah? It's kind of similar with Hamas in Gaza. You never know. All these Lebanese could be Hezbollah. You know what I mean? They could be plainclothes Hezbollah. You know what I mean? So they'd have to do with Gaza. Yeah, does pushing Hezbollah back 20 kilometres back inland from the Lebanese border, does that mean ultimately? Is that going to mean doing what the Lebanese Hezbollah did to those villages in Israel, i.e., force the evacuation of them? So that 20-kilometre buffer zone from the Israeli border north into Lebanon, 20 kilometres into Lebanon, does that mean evacuating that whole territory and making it a no man's land? Because if it does, it's a lot of people. We've got a city about 10 kilometres north of the Israeli border on the coast, the city of Tyre, which is 60,000 people, So, and then to do that, how do you do that? Do you just bomb it from the air? Probably not. In the same way you saw in Gaza, they could bomb it night and day all they wanted, but if your goal is to actually remove people like Hezbollah or Hamas from a particular area they're bombing, you know you have to go in afterwards. You soften it up, quote unquote, euphemistically soften it up with air raids. Then you have to send in the troops, and that's a difficult proposition to clear 20 kilometers of what Lebanon's maybe 60, 70 kilometers wide at that point. So 20 kilometers
bigger
wide and 7 kilometers long.
A bigger scale than Gaza. And
way bigger, yeah.
A better armed foe.
Yeah, and different terrain and all that kind of stuff. It's not flat land. Gaza is pretty much flat land, although Hamas had all their tunnels. That area of pretty much all of Lebanon is quite rocky, quite mountainous. You're talking about sand, you're talking about rocks and hills and mountains. And of course, you'd have to assume the same level of, you know, dug in sites and tunnels, etc., etc., etc. So you can see how it's like, as much as Israel talks about, we're going to deal with Hezbollah once and for all, blah, 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 blah. It's like, really? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? And what are you willing to sacrifice to do that,
So many months from now, in hindsight, this spectacular pager/radio operation was just a propaganda coup.
Is that all you've got?
It made us look good.
Is that all you've got, basically? Is that and a bunch of bombs from the air, is that all you've got, really? Is that what you're going to do? Is that Israel?
You haven't achieved the political change you want.
So why don't we? That's why people always, you might get bored of hearing it when you hear people, diplomats and intellectuals and that kind of thing talking about this, and historians talking about this situation in the Middle East in general. They always go back to a diplomatic solution, a political solution, that there is no viable military solution to the conflict in broad terms of Israel versus these other groups in the Middle East. But Israel is in trouble on that respect, because, and I mean, they could over the years, they could have many times opted for a political solution, a peaceful solution, but it would by definition always require Israel to lose something, to give something up, because Israel took it all, and over the years proceeded to take more and more and more. They took it all ideologically, let's say, and politically in a certain sense. In 1948, when they created the State of Israel, they, whether anybody knew it at the time or not, Israel's plan, as we've seen all along, was to effectively have that area of historical Palestine all for Israel, and the Palestinians would have to suck it up and live as,
well, leave ideally.
Leave or live as second-class citizens. So the problem with Israel that's why it has never really seriously pursued any peaceful settlement, because by definition it's similar to America in a certain sense as a global hegemon. America can't go, okay, look, I see a multipolar world, the rise of Russia and China, I see a multipolar world emerging, or we had a good run of it most of the 20th century, you could say even before that, good 100 years at least, as a global number one, living high in the hog. But the world's changed technologically, it has developed socially, population size, all sorts of different things have changed dramatically in the past 50, 60, 70 years. And it's not really viable. Really. America can't really maintain itself as the global hegemon, do what I say or else type thing. And they could look at that calmly and coolly and just say, okay, look, we've had a good run. Let's just accept things as they are, and let's start to adjust to. But here's the question. Here's the next word of this problem. Let's adjust and begin to let's begin to structure ourselves in a way that we're prepared for being downgraded as a global hegemon. And that's like that's our red line. It's like, but how do you expect to?
It's like telling an Israeli that there's going to be a two-state solution.
Yeah.
They just listen.
That means I lose something. No. They go, no. Therefore, your only solution is conflict. But there is no military solution. So, what are you going to do? And that's why we're in this situation. That's why we seem to be in this interminable kind of like moment of, or prolonged moment of tension. Of maybe
Maybe
war at any
wars,
moment.
Strike, counter-strike.
Right, because
Strike, counter-strike.
Israel wants, but Israel can't, doesn't. It's writing checks that its body politic and body social can't cash, right? It can't do what it claims it is going to do.
Yeah.
It's warmongering and saber rattling and all this kind of stuff, but it can't actually put its money where its mouth is. And that's also an explanation as to why you may be, people are frustrated with the resistance. You see it all over Twitter.
Yeah.
People are very frustrated with, why isn't Iran doing this? Why isn't Hezbollah doing this?
Yeah.
Why aren't they all getting together and just destroying Israel? And it's like, well, because they realize also that Israel has put itself into this very difficult position, and through their own fault, through their own greed and intransigence, and that makes them dangerous. They've backed themselves into a corner over the years, over the decades, and that makes them dangerous, like a cornered rat type of thing. And you need to be very careful, especially when they've got like 200, 300, 400, however many. They've definitely got a bunch of nukes. Yeah. So what would these people do? So it's like these really are dangerous for everybody.
Scheme things like hacking into supply chains.
Well, that's an example of what they're forced to do because of the position.
That's how cornered they are.
Right. In their mindset.
The pager thing tells us how cornered.
Yeah.
And
but that's not like new, you know what I mean? I mean, that's part of the Jewish mindset and the propaganda around the wandering Jews over the centuries, right? That they're always out to.
Careful, Joe. You just hit 4 anti-Semitisms out of 5. There.
Cool. But anyway, I'm just saying that's the truth.
Dial it back.
Well, you just have to look up what do you call him, Theodore Herzl and his World Zionist Congress and this, in the advance of the creation of the State of Israel, and him lobbying for the creation of the State of Israel and what he was saying. He's basically saying all the things that I'm saying, except he never admits. There's no admission of. There's the whole laying out of how the Jews were persecuted over the centuries, which there isn't a lot of dispute around, but nobody ever talks about why. It's this weird anomalous thing that the only way that you can explain it is that, well, the guy
hates us because we're.
I don't know why the guy hates us. They don't even know why they hate us. They have for centuries, and it's just complete. We did nothing wrong. We just, we just wanted to be Jews in European countries or elsewhere that we moved to, and they just hated us for it. They just didn't like us, I mean, sure, we had our own God and our own practices, and we tended to keep ourselves apart, and some of our rabbis were doing maybe some, strange kind of religious
voodoo
type thing, but still, they didn't accept us, and they turned on us, and that's the way it's always been. And eventually, we just decided, look, this isn't going to change. We can't change these people. We can't stop them doing this. There's no point in us trying to, even if we try, even though they never did. Even if we try to, some of them did, try to
cohabitate.
To what's the term? For immigrants to
integrate.
Even though we tried to integrate into these societies, didn't matter. They still didn't like us. They didn't want us, which is not really true, because actually Herzl himself said that, and other Jewish groups at the time, we're talking about the late 1800s here, they actually were very unhappy about Jews, criticised Jews everywhere and anywhere who were integrating and just wanted to become French as the French, but just with Jewish religious practices. They said, no, listen, that's not going to work. There's no point in doing it that way. We need to take the power to ourselves and, establish ourselves around our own set of beliefs and practices and all that kind of stuff, and we'll create a homeland for ourselves in Israel. There's this place not in Israel, in Palestine. There's a place in Palestine, and there's no one there. So we'll just go there and move in, and it'll be fine. Trust me, I got this. It'll be fine. Okay, but there was a lot of violence there in the creation of the State of Israel, up beforehand and afterwards. There's a lot of things didn't go very well. Just give it a few years.
Yeah.
Give it a few decades.
Give it a few years, they said.
Yeah. Like, let's say, what are we now? 1948, things look bad. Say you jump to 2024. Okay, I know it's a long time. Still 80 years or something like that. At that point, it'll just be the land of milk and honey. It'll be so peaceful and so awesome. So awesome.
It'll be one giant yeshiva.
Yes.
And we'll be
It'll
milking goats and
yes, and drinking honey.
drinking honey.
Milk and honey. We'll mix milk with honey and we'll be bathing in milk and honey. So we jump forward to 2024 and no, it hasn't changed. It's actually got a lot worse. So yeah, there's something wrong with your plan all along. History has... Now the question is what was wrong? Who's to blame? We're getting down to the core question here, Neil. Who's to blame? Is it them guy who just never, ever, ever accepted us and always wanted to just get rid of us just for some mad... Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's madness, like, it's a type of madness.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you just, like, say you hated, like, chestnut trees?
With a passion.
With a passion, and we're going around, like, attacking them and, stabbing them and knocking them down and stuff. Okay, well, why are you doing that? And I'm like, just because. I don't know. Because it's a chestnut tree. And that's the only thing people can get out of you. They'll call you mad, no?
Yeah.
Or anti-Semitic. But that's the explanation. That's the official explanation as far as, the Western world's concerned and as far as Jews are concerned, that literally all of the reasons... the reason we're in this situation today with Israel and Palestine and the Middle East and all that kind of stuff is because of historical, centuries-old hatred of Jews by Goys. And the reason they hated them is, don't know.
Yeah.
No reason whatsoever, but very consistent. Until finally, after centuries, the Jews had to decide, listen, we got to do something with this. We need our own homeland. We need to build a big wall and, a big electronic wall. We need to build up a military and we need to infiltrate other governments. We want to make sure we're safe because this has just gone on for too long. And still, nobody ever has explained. And I'd love somebody to explain to me what is the actual reason. Because I don't buy the idea that it's just for no reason.
And where does it end? I mean, there's one way people try to explain this is, well, I see what they're doing. Israel wants a greater Israel. So they want from the Nile to the Euphrates, all of Lebanon, something like that. And then they'll stop. You've seen that. That's kind of materialist geopolitical rationale for all this. They're going to stop when they have between these two rivers. How do they know that? I think that's an assumption as well.
Yeah. Well, they don't have enough people to populate.
No.
A bigger landmass. That's silly, you know what I mean? Greater Israel. There are not enough Jews to populate it, so to run it. I think you have to look back at America, because none of the Americans and the Brits, because Israel wouldn't exist today without their help, basically. Primarily their help. And their continued support over the years. So, I mean, for me, if you want to look at it from a geopolitical perspective, it's because His Majesty's government at the time, in 1917, looked favourably on the creation of a state for the Israeli people in the Middle East. It just so happens to be right beside a bunch of very strategically important at this time natural resources, i.e. oil, and then later gas. That's why we looked favourably on it at the time. To have a little outpost there, a garrison, people we could rely on, So yeah, it's just power, control, wealth. It's its own self-perpetuating motivation, So that's from the political point of view, it's very understandable, why it's happened that way. But it gets more murky when you go back into history, back 300-400 years ago, and the whole persecution of the Jews throughout European countries and all that kind of stuff. That led to, was really the main reason why Israel was created, or a big part of the support for the creation of Israel was that idea of the Jewish claim of persecution throughout the ages. And it's not really disputed that they were. But then you go, well, why were they? And then you get this stupid answer that doesn't make any sense. So you have to go to 6 anti-Semitisms out of 5 at that point, right? And you start to get into stuff that's just weird, but it has to have.
Yeah.
I'll take a strange, bizarre explanation over none at all. Like that, the reason this happened was nothing. There is no reason. No reason that makes any sense whatsoever. I mean, the idea that just because non-Jews hated Jews just because is stupid, right? It's obviously much more complex than that. But anyway, so the resistance in the so-called resistance in the Middle East today, they're in trouble. But so are the Israelis. A whole lot of them are in trouble. Hopefully, it won't spread to the rest of the world. But it's not good. And I think Iran, Hezbollah, Iraq, the Iraqis, the Houthis, anybody and everybody under the umbrella of the resistance are just have enough understanding of it to realize that, look, Israel has nowhere to go here. And if we just wait, and we have to use a lot of forbearance and turning of the other cheek and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately they will either wake up to the fact that they don't have anywhere to go, that they can't achieve what they want to achieve, and they're going to have to accept a position within the Middle East that is concomitant with their, with the amount of the power they have, in terms of resources and that kind of stuff. They're going to have to come to the table and work something out with the rest of us eventually, or they'll be the architect of their own destruction. Give them enough rope, basically, because they're crazy, But at the same time, they realize that it's not just, they're not doing that, out of them being, knowing the ultimate solution or being, a lot of foresight or being very farsighted. It's, like I said, the fact that Israel has a bunch of nukes, and you don't mess with Israel. You don't push it too far.
Yeah. I hate talking about Israel.
You do?
Yeah, I think ultimately they themselves don't understand what they're doing. That's why you can get, if you get into an argument with an Israeli, a hypothetical one, I'm not saying I have recently, but you can see it just when they themselves do the arguing online through their bots, right? You give an answer back that's at the level that they're arguing. So maybe it's a secular level of states, international relations states. And then they say, well, what about this? And you go back and forth. And then they flip and they bring in the Bible.
Mm.
And now there's a religious, you've entirely shifted the foundation of the discussion here to biblical.
Mm.
Okay, so now it's a religious thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back and forth. Maybe if you happen to be knowledgeable, you can go back and forth with them. Yeah, but your God, yeah, well, that was a long time ago. Lots happened in between. Actually, the historical validity of that document is really dubious. Mm-hmm. It was probably propaganda at the time, retrojected back. And, you end up showing, where you're going is to try to show them that there's no historical material basis to what they claim is their history. It's not, it's anecdotal, largely. Mm-hmm. It's religious. Scribes, and then they flip back again. The argument morphs again. Mm-hmm. Now we're going back into but we are whatever, but we are still a people. Are you saying we're not an ethnicity? And it goes back to ethnicities and races and stuff. And it's this. I think that their fluidity with their own foundations, their own self-identity.
Yep.
It's like you said. It's essentially there's a madness at the heart of this. Mm. There's no solidity, and so here I would go with, well, there's something higher working through them that has its purpose. The Israelis don't understand it themselves.
It's their God.
What they think is their God, but it
is their God, Yahweh.
Yeah, that's in many names, right? There's many names. That's one of them.
Jehovah.
There it bleeds over into the Christian God, yeah.
Well,
one interpretation of it. So that's the gripers have it very simple.
Who?
They be listening to this going, these guys are getting themselves in knots for no reason whatsoever. Here it's very simple. It's the Jews. That's the answer to everything. It's because they're Jewish. And indeed, their God's evil. Our God's good. Our God is Christ. Christ is King. Black and white. Nicely done. Wrapped it up. No problem. There's a scandal that erupts. There's an international crisis. Whatever it is, just dig a little. Oh, there he is. There's a Jew behind it. And it's wrapped up. It's done,
Yeah.
And I think everyone else is just getting themselves caught up in knots because they're afraid to say it. You just won't come out and say it because you're afraid to be called anti-Semitic. So, you won't just admit the clean, simple truth. Jews at 9/11, Jews at JFK, da, 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 da. But see, that's not true. That, for example, JFK was just, it's a factor in it.
Yeah.
But it's not that, Mossad didn't order JFK's hit. Wrapped up. Let's all go home.
Mm-hmm.
And the CIA was what?
Just hanging around watching.
Growing roses in the garden at the time. Yeah, you touched on it earlier. There's a weird historical thread that comes through both the US and its development in the 1800s and then the British Empire before that.
Mm-hmm.
And people have to give it a read. I mean, there's some decent introductions on Wikipedia. Christian Zionism.
Yeah.
It was called British Israelism at the time.
Yeah.
Long before anyone like Theodore Herzl suggested a homeland for the Jews.
Yeah.
Long before the first major Sanhedrin, the gathering of Jewish rabbis under Napoleon. There was a movement in Britain where English Christians believed it was like a revivalist type movement of the time, the 1700s.
Well,
they
that
believed
was a Reformation.
they themselves were the Jews.
Protestantism.
Yes.
And it's focused on the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And it's linking of Talmudic or Judaism with Christianity being one and the same, essentially. They're just being the Old and New Testament all being part of the same, right?
So there's religious / ideological capture.
Yeah,
because it ultimately comes from another level of reality.
Yeah.
And yes, one of its names is Yahweh, but it's not even that simple.
Well, now Neil, don't be going too far in that direction, because you'll be.
But this is what we talked about, trying to make sense of this and the craziness at this level, trying to understand their motives and whether they're material, whether they're realist in geopolitics.
Well, they are that as well.
They're that as well, but then
at this level, yeah. But
they spent 15 years doing Operation Pager, and that's it. Oh well, they got rumbles, and they didn't. They're so cunning and so amazing, but they didn't foresee, I don't know, getting rumbled because someone actually dropped the pager and realized, and the word went out. Okay, do it now anyway.
Yep, push the button. Yeah, well, but that's still a win. Or at least it was spun as a win. This is the article I wrote just on that BAC thing, but it has a picture of the Jewish God in it, sort of. If you just go down to a picture of the jewelry. So the only product that that's this website, BAC's website right there, up. So the only physical product that this BAC Consulting in Hungary that was the intermediary for getting the license for the pagers. The only physical product that had on its website was something called they're promoting something called the Nelkail jewels. And if you did a web search for Nelkail jewels, all you found was the same website, that this same BAC website. There was no other returns for it. They weren't being sold anywhere else. So it's strange. They have this website, and it's got if like just above there you see they're promoting stuff like increasing women's economic empowerment in Ghana and the Dutch Ministry Lead Program, Libyan Accelerator Hub. None of those things actually exist. It's very interesting to look at how. I mean, there's probably a lot of websites that. Scam websites that do that. They just put in general humanitarian type things that they're consulting for, and you try and find out if they actually exist, and they don't. The only links that you get are lead back to the original website. But the one thing, the only physical product that they just put up there, and there was nowhere else to buy them. You couldn't buy them actually at all. But the only place on the web, like so, you'll see this on their website on BAC Consulting.
Yeah.
Nelkail jewels are inspired by a very peculiar energy embodied by the energy of Nelkail, the angel fighting for freedom. Right? This just appears on their website, and they're like, hey, get some of these. Then you go, oh, Nelkail jewels, wonder where I can get those. Let me see if they're on Amazon or something. You put it in a Google search, and the only return is back to the same website.
Right.
So they stuck this up here, and you go, Nelkail jewels, what does that even mean? You look up the word Nelkail, and it's on Wikipedia and all this kind of stuff, and this basically is the name of a Kabbalistic angel, one of the 72 angels who bear the mystical name of the Jewish God, i.e. the Shemaphore, i.e. Yahweh, right? And then there's one of that, I don't know if it's that particular angel, but one of those 72 angels anyway, are all Yahweh
That's what I was talking
in some
about.
weird
Many
way,
names.
right? All right, exactly. So anyway, the picture below then is basically Yahweh, and it's from a tapestry from 100 years ago, depicting this, and that's basically the Jewish God instructing Abraham on the finer points of Jewish doctrine, Jewish religious practice. So there's the Israeli God right there. Anyway, just thought it meant.
Do you think they dropped that in specifically?
Yeah, as a little...
As a signature?
Yeah, and what a signature, like, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Quick look at what's behind it and you go, oh, so it's about the Jewish God telling the Jewish patriarch to chop off part of his penis, and everybody else has to do that too. These days even the women could do it. Brigitte Macron could do it. Anyway, so super. This is very, very anti-Semitic. It's hard. It's, you know.
Well, they
it's
themselves
strange.
left that to be found. I mean,
yeah, but
the BAC
yeah, but
people,
not to be anti-Semitic. Neil. They didn't encourage anti-Semitism like that. That you're engaging in that kind of level of anti-Semitism. But it's strange that.
But
where you can't talk about anything. The thing you can't talk about
is the thing that they plaster all over the place. They
yeah.
They wanted that to be found.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I was referring to. 72 angels, many names, all Yahweh, but it's a complex, it's higher. We have a covenant with them.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll call it him. Sometimes he's the supreme God creator. And that's where the tie-in with Judeo-Christianity is, and in fact Islam as well. We share the same supreme, but sometimes it's not. Their reference to Yahweh and his many names is 72 angels, so it's below the supreme creator. Even when you get on a religious discussion, certainly with Israelis, not about maybe Jews in general, but it's amorphous, it shifts. Are we talking about the supreme being Yahweh now, or this other version? I mean,
yeah,
you can't get solid grounds. It's completely infuriating. That's why it's.
You're not allowed to talk about it.
No, well, you should talk about it, but.
Well, the only people who are going to get to listen to it are the people who are listening live, because this show's going to be removed from YouTube, even though we didn't say anything, you know, egregiously or outrageously anti-Semitic.
No, we're trying to understand them.
The fact that, you know,
we're trying to understand those who seem to refuse to want to understand themselves.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Make it make sense. You tell me.
Yeah, well, it's what we have a drive and motivation to do is to understand.
I think your explanation from a couple of shows back of there is some consistency. There's a consistent motivation in keeping certainly the U.S. government and through it many other governments on board with whatever Israel wants.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the drive of never again.
Yeah, of course.
And we cannot trust. We especially, and the ones we Israelis cannot trust the most are the Americans. Right. So we will have the most control and influence there, if possible.
Yeah, well, also
to direct that.
Not just because we can trust them the most, but I think mainly because they're the most powerful country in the world. If you're going to infiltrate a power, you want to infiltrate the biggest power, right? So that's where you get the most power. You drive most power from influencing the biggest power. I don't think there's any hierarchy of mistrust in a certain sense. They distrust everybody because never again, right? Because it happened before, and if that's your narrative, like I think I said that I don't know how long ago. If you put yourself in that mindset and you believe that whole that social history and religious history and of Judaism, of the Jews over the past X number of hundreds of years, whatever, and you really buy all that and you don't question it at all, that look, here's all the evidence that we've been repeatedly persecuted over the centuries leading up to the Holocaust, which is a really big persecution. This is more than enough evidence that we are, as our God said, we are a people who will walk alone, you know, wander alone, whatever. Will never be accepted because we're God's chosen people. we're different from them, and therefore they'll never accept us because, you know, implicitly they're kind of lower than us in a certain sense, you know. Because we're God's chosen people. I mean, if you're God's chosen people, all the people who aren't God's chosen people have to be a bit lower than you, right? And they'll never accept us. They're jealous of us. They don't understand us. They're just, you know what I mean? So if you really believe that, and believe that these non-Jews would, you know, have persecuted you, and you have all the evidence that they persecuted over the years and all this kind of stuff, you can see how you would think, like, we need a place where we can be secure, first and foremost, because wandering around these countries was really bad for us. We need a secure homeland. And then, because this is an ever-present threat, we need to make sure that these other countries who would somehow, somewhere in the back of their minds or in the back rooms or whatever, it's always brewing that they're going to persecute us again. We need to make sure, we need to have an in with them. We need to have stuff over them. We need to control them, basically, so that they don't do it again. You know what I mean? So it's the quintessential victimhood mindset. If you know what I mean.
And by persecute, you put some of that in quotes, because that would include, I imagine, the US having a hold over the purse strings and the distribution of weapons to Israel, which is permanent. It's like a Damoclean sword over Israel. If that were shrunk, never mind withheld altogether, that's persecution. You can imagine the reaction. And that's what all the effort in Western capitals is in aid of, to stave off. Like, I do think I'd love to pursue it as a line of research, but I connected a few dots in midsummer there, where the incoming UK government, Labour, Keir Starmer, among their first policy announcements, the statements at the foreign level was, we were going to review some of our export weapons licenses to Israel in light of the barbarity and the ICJ's decision in Gaza. There was something else specifically. Oh yeah, they would withhold their objection to the ICJ issuing arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant, the defense minister of Israel. I bet that went down in Israel like, and then 10 days later, massive fucking rioting erupts across the UK after a stabby jihadi, who wasn't really, he was a black teenager from Wales, but whatever, the message went out in accompanying with the news of the attack, just randomly stabbed a bunch of kids at a dance class in Southport, just because, well, the message people picked up was because he was a jihadi. Yeah. And that, there's been no investigation, zero follow-up. No one knows what happened. Where is he? Is he charged? You know, there was no motivation. Yeah, we think he was just mad. Maybe we're having shrinks check him out and stuff. That kind of thing. Like, oh, by the way, of course, the one follow-up to the story is that in August, the British government said, actually, no, that thing about reviewing the export licenses,
we're not.
Maybe next year.
Yeah,
carry on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's the influence and control they have, and I mean,
but the paranoia and the sense of persecution it's super tragic for everyone involved, if you like, including them, because they get what they want, and everyone backs away, and they still get. But they get, what it means is they get more rope in terms of weaponry and influence, and to do more stuff that gets them further into a corner of their own making. And so the paranoia just goes up with it, and the sense of persecution, the victimhood. You think in these last 80 years, the sense of victimhood's more or less gone down?
No,
it goes up with.
Yeah.
The more success they have, the worse they feel.
But that's evidence that you're on the wrong path.
Yeah.
For anybody, you know, writ large like that, or in your personal life, whatever, you know, if you see that kind of thing happening, you're on the wrong path. You're doing something wrong. But there's no self-reflection on these people, you know. I mean, they're possessed. It's a sickness. They're possessed by power and control, and the whole. I mean, it's hard to pull the two apart. Do they actually feel? Do people like Netanyahu and the movers and shakers in the Israeli government and intelligences, do they actually believe this whole narrative about persecution? I think that for them, that's not really an issue. It was never. They're aware that that's not really the case, and they use it to get all sorts of things that they want and need, right? The victimhood status. But for now, and for quite a long time now, it's maybe forever, it's always been about power and control, you know. It's a self-perpetuating, you know. But you're not allowed to talk about it. You know?
I've got a commenter, Liquid Rush. I'm Jewish and I'm still trying to understand it. Thanks for trying, guys.
Yeah, well, a good person, if you're Jewish and you're still trying to understand, a good person to, and again, you know, there's no clear-cut answers, let's say, but Gilad Atzmon is a good person to listen to or to read. He's been around for a very long time, and his conclusion after all these years of trying to analyze it, and you know, he's not a Israel first or super Jew. He's renounced his Judaism and all that kind of stuff, but he just advocates that all Jews just walk away from it. Walk away from it.
It seems to be a big ask, though.
But it's not worth it. Like, what are you, a human being? Are you a Jew? First and foremost.
Yeah.
You know? That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, for us, I suppose, you know, we, like you alluded to it, and we're not going to get into it or whatever, but you alluded to that it's, you know, powers and principalities and stuff, and maybe stuff at some other level influencing people's minds, and that's really what's going on. So you're never going to understand it in nuts and bolts 3D kind of terminology, although a lot of it is understandable from a geopolitical perspective and power and control perspective. It's all very prosaic and very, you know, it's simple. It's easily understood, you know, and even all the manipulations and the whole anti-Semitism thing that prevents people from trying to look at it, you know. I mean, that the fact that anti-Semitism is used so often to try and shut down any investigation of what's going on suggests that there's something there that is actually the source of the reality that could expose what's actually going on, but it's veiled from people by the threat of being not just accused of anti-Semitism, but actually prosecuted for anti-Semitism. So it's ridiculous. It's stupid on the face of it. It's a farce. It's a joke. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I think they're gonna. It's possible. Like, I mean, they have been, and they're still, as we speak, moving tanks and all sorts of artillery and stuff to the Lebanese border. So is that a ruse, or are they actually going to? Because they have a few options. They can just, like I said, they can just continue to do some bombing campaigns, but that's not going to achieve their goals, as stated. They have to put troops in, as we saw in Gaza. Like I said, you can bomb it for as long as you want, but eventually you have to put the troops in to actually deal with the actual personnel who are the threat to the villages and towns in the north of Israel. You have to actually remove Hezbollah members from that area. You're not going to do it just by bombing. So you have to send in tanks and infantry and stuff. So at this point, it seems like that's what they're going to go with. So how far they'll go, who knows? It's a really tired old story at this point, you know?
Yeah. Which is why I don't like talking about it. But
it's coming to, you can't ignore it, because it really is kind of front and center, you know?
Yeah, well,
not the only thing, but it's,
you can't ignore it, because it, you know what, it would just, no, maybe not Gaza exceptional, but at least Israel versus Hezbollah would just be another relatively low level, low intensity conflict going on the planet, just one among many. But then, like last week, it grabs your attention, it forces you to look at it. It's sick, because everyone's supposed to look at it, but then no one's supposed to don't talk about it any more than what we suggest. A spectacular, amazing plot in one fell swoop did this, blah, blah, blah. When if you know anything about the conflict at all, the situation in the Middle East, you know that's bullshit. So everyone look, we got your attention, now shut up, don't think about it, don't even think about it, never mind talk about it. That's the only reason we're talking about today, because of the pager attack.
Otherwise you have to sit and wait and watch, see what happens.
I don't have to change the title of the show, but I thought we were going to go with the Trump assassination attempt.
That's just one paragraph.
Top of the show. It's just one paragraph. Yeah, the problem with these things is they happen on Sunday nights. So it happened last Sunday, right after the show finished. there's a Fox News report on this guy. This is one of the last media. I mean, it's already gone. It's just crazy how there can be a second Trump assassination attempt. Maybe it's in the news for 2 days and then, it's gone. So I just want to play this couple of minutes. At least Fox is keeping up with the bullshit on this incident with Ryan Routh. Have a listen.
So how the citizen of the year with a nice house and a good family turned into an assassin living in a barn with more felonies than money in his bank account. Ruth couldn't even afford child support. Primetime looked into it, and he was always behind on payments to his ex, always. She even agreed to terminate the support due to his financial situation. Ruth sold his house in North Carolina for $174,000 and then was also living in an $800,000 bungalow in Hawaii. How does a man with no money for child support suddenly start living in a pricey house in Hawaii and afford flights to Taiwan, Turkey, Poland, Ukraine? His neighbors say sometimes they wouldn't see him for 3 years. The house in Hawaii Ryan was living with is connected to his fiancée, Kathleen Schaefer. Kathleen worked at Victoria's Secret. She's engaged to this guy who all of a sudden flies to Ukraine for months, and she's fine with that. As we reported last night, Ruth spent 8 months sleeping in Ukrainian military barracks, and he was rubbing elbows with cold-blooded killers. Why would you leave your fiancée, who just lost her job at Victoria's Secret, to fly to Ukraine to recruit Muslim militants to fight Russia? And if you have $68 in your bank account, how are you spending thousands on airfare? How are you even feeding yourself in Ukraine? And everywhere he goes, he gets press, from the local papers to the New York Times to Newsweek. And every time he's arrested, he gets a pass. He's been charged with 100 different counts, and he's never served a day in jail. How's that possible? And after spending months with Ukrainian mobsters and scaring the bejesus out of everybody connected with him, he was flagged to the FBI, the State Department, and Homeland Security. But they all dropped the investigation. And he shows up to the president's golf course in a car with stolen plates and a loaded rifle with a scratched-off serial number. And no one's curious if Ryan Routh was sent here on a mission to kill. And no one's located his fiancée. It's not that hard to find somebody in Hawaii. And the Biden-Harris administration's stonewalling. They won't even let Florida investigators into the crime scene.
We were rebuffed. Our investigators were rebuffed just going to the fence line outside of Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach. And so I think they've taken the position, they don't want the state of Florida to be involved in this.
What are they hiding? How do we not know there's more Ryan Rouths or Thomas Crooks out there? How do we not know?
Yeah, good question.
What do you think? When it first happened, we were just going with, well, it looks like he was genuinely an ideologically committed uber Democrat.
Well, partly, that,
and that he would genuinely volunteer to kill Trump.
Except the main question we had was, how did he know that Trump was going to be there on that day? It wasn't on the schedule, and then we're thinking, well, he's supposedly in the bushes for 12 hours. Well, that's true or not. He was in the bushes he hung around for 12 hours, but still, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see Trump. You know what I mean? So he picked a position on the fifth hole. It's all a bit, it suggests that someone. I mean, it's at a very basic level of feeding him information would be feeding him Trump's schedule. Some within the Secret Service who knew the schedule, feeding him the schedule. He's going to be at the golf course at this time today. So, and then here's a good place for you to go and hide out. Go and set up in the bushes there. Here's how you can get in, and that's it. And then not check the whole area. Just I mean, it's another version of Butler, but much more scaled down in that sense. Just basic information given to somebody who was willing to do it, and maybe had his head messed with or something. Who knows? It's always a possibility. These people.
Like I said, he could have been committed, though. I mean, he wrote a book in which he wanted to assassinate Trump and Putin and Xi.
So maybe that wasn't necessary.
And support Taiwan independence.
But he's obviously a crazy person. Like, if you look at his videos from Ukraine and all that kind of stuff, he's obviously delusional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? long before, I think he was in Ukraine right from the get-go, a couple of months or a month after the conflict started in 2022. He was there in April for however long. So we don't know that he was necessarily anti-Trump at that point, and that's 2.5 years ago. But his activities and his attitude towards Ukraine and his speeches, on video and stuff about Ukraine was straight up CNN propaganda, right? Ukrainians are just fighting for freedom, and evil dictators are taking over the world, and we need to do it. And he seemed to really believe that, you know what I mean? So this guy's a low IQ kind of guy,
Or a high IQ Democrat. Did you see his book? Just the cover, even.
I saw the cover, super dodgy, yeah.
Let's see if I can. I'll send it to Scotty in case people haven't seen this.
Mishmash.
And people were posting excerpts on social media, and yeah, he sounded like, it's like Tucker Carlson said about him. This guy sounds like he has the exact same worldview as Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
The title of the book is Ukraine's Unwinnable War by Ryan Routh. The Fatal Flaw of Democracy, World Abandonment, and the Global Citizen. Taiwan, Afghanistan, North Korea, World War III, and he didn't choose the best font color for that. And the end of humanity. Okay, so he's got like an apocalyptic Democrat. Yeah. But that's obviously, that streams off him because he's been all over social media, he's written a book. But the thing about what Jesse Waters just mentioned about him inevitably rubbing shoulders with some intelligent, spooky people in Ukraine, all over Washington too.
No chance. No chance he didn't. That kind of thing is obviously, the whole war effort in Ukraine and the volunteers and the international legions and all that kind of stuff is all intel controlled and directed. So if he was in the middle of that, then he was well known to them.
The local county sheriff in West Palm Beach, I won't play it, but he gave a press conference and he suspects he had assistance as well. Just as incredulous as Jesse Waters there as to how he got that close and how he knew Trump was there and stuff.
What's strange about all this is like how there's still this, the other side, like the Biden administration or CNN or the leftist, whatever media, even the BBC or whatever, would be, circumspect about it and nobody engages in conspiracy theories, right?
I know.
And the scope of what can be included in the term conspiracy theory has greatly expanded over the past 20 years, you know what I mean? Now it's like stuff that's just like A plus B equals C. It's pure simple logic, right? Like it's like when you have information, right? You have this guy who has this clear, he's on video, he's multiple videos of him in Ukraine lobbying for bringing people to Ukraine. He was going to bring people from Afghanistan. He wanted to bring people from Afghanistan to Ukraine, Taliban. Or Afghan military, sorry. He had all these ideas and he's talking about all this kind of stuff, and he's in Ukraine. He's all over the place. So, and then everybody knows. The BBC talks about Western governments, intel agencies, military organizing, volunteer groups to go to Ukraine. And here's this guy doing the organizing of volunteer groups. So it's a conspiracy theory to suggest that he are very likely linked to, or was known to, and cooperating to one extent or another with Western intelligence agencies. That's a conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah.
That's a conspiracy. That's ridiculous. Right. Like, because it's just like simple monkey see, A plus 1 + 1 = 2, right?
Yeah.
And nobody denies any of the detail of the 1 + 1. Nobody denies 1 or 1. It's just putting them together is a conspiracy theory. Right?
Yeah. Guy spouts off CIA talking points. Right. Guy hangs out with CIA people.
Right.
Guy tries to assassinate Trump. What connection to the CIA?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about?
Leaving aside the Trump thing, it's like even a conspiracy theory to say that he was in any way involved with intel agencies when he obviously would have had to have been. But then that puts him in the milieu of Western CIA, MI6 and intel agencies, known to them. And then the same guy who's definitely being tracked and watched or whatever, known to them, he appears on Trump's golf range, pointing a gun at him. That's 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. And that's definitely a conspiracy theory, right?
Right.
1 + 1 = 2 is already a conspiracy theory. But 1 + 1 + 1 = 3 is uber conspiracy theory and has to be shot down straight away. And it's like, why? Give me a good reason why we shouldn't say that. Why that doesn't make absolute sense.
As of today, this is a kind of another tell that something is afoot here, or something is off with the lone gunman idea. He's been charged with federal gun crimes, but not with anything to do with, not with conspiracy. That's what he should be ironically charged with: conspiracy to assassinate someone, to kill someone, murder. Never mind a presidential candidate. And his whole history is like that. Like Jesse Water says, there's like she's got a rap sheet. They showed 4 of the mugshots. There are more mugshots of him. It's like he's got a whole history of gun charges, and this assassination attempt or plot, because he was plotting to attempt it, is going to go down. He's going to be charged. Well, they do say that maybe more charges coming, but for now, all it is last Monday, Routh was criminally charged with illegally possessing a firearm as a convicted felon. And second charge, possessing a firearm with an obliterated serial number. Nothing about
pointing a gun at the president. No.
Okay.
If you pointed at Biden, that would be a different story, obviously. But the fact they pointed at Trump, meh.
Did you see Matt Gaetz claims that he heard from someone in DHS came to his office and told him that there are 5 assassination teams out there.
Oh, yeah?
Targeting Trump, or queuing up to target Trump. It's like something from a movie. I mean,
it's like next.
Okay, let's try the Japanese Yakuza. Okay, no, that didn't work. Yeah. Let's try the homegrown Democrati. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try the CA Patsy. No, it didn't. So have a listen here. It's a bit dubious because of, well, we'll let you decide.
And I'll break a little news for you. I had a senior official from the Department of Homeland Security in my office before the second assassination attempt, saying that what he has assessed is that there are 5 known assassination teams in the United States, 3 inspired by other governments, 2 that are here that are known domestic assassination teams. And with that, this individual was coming to me concerned that the force protection around President Trump, even prior to that second assassination attempt, was not sufficient for what it needed to be. And the coordination at that level, at the dignitary protection level, is like the bare minimum that we have to do to keep our presidents, our presidential candidates safe while they're on the trail.
So there are 5, I just want to follow up, 5 assassination teams. Are they all targeting Trump? Is it other officials?
Yes. No, wow. I should have been clear about that. 5 teams that we know are targeting Trump. And so that raises real questions about why certain teams were being pulled off of the Trump detail and put on, for example, the Jill Biden detail. Now, we don't want anything bad to happen to Jill Biden, but at the same time, the threat envelope for her was substantially different than the threat envelope around President Trump, and it would not have necessitated pulling assets away from the Trump detail for the Jill Biden detail or the John Bolton detail or any other details that were beefed up. At the same time, the requests from the Trump detail and from the Trump campaign for more security were going unanswered.
Maybe if they know that there's 5 teams out there, they should just go ahead and arrest them, no?
Yeah, hi, Matt. I'm from the DHS. You're not going to believe this. Yeah.
It's like
it's a bit dodgy because it was told to him before. Which, if it's told to you before, it's kind of like it turns out that just before Crooks did his thing, that the word had gone out that Iran was plotting to kill Trump, right? So this is kind of like it smacks of a foreign workaround, which you plant beforehand so that you have a trail that leads out of the country.
Well, the next one...
Oswald, Cuba, Moscow.
Yeah, the next one will have to be an Iranian-linked...
they better get it right this time.
Immigrant, and it'll be Iran who did it. That'd be a boon for Israel, like.
Yeah. 2 for 1. Well, we did wonder if the Crooks, because there was some Iran connection with him.
No,
there wasn't.
No,
Not
that was-
explicitly, but
they said that at
that
the time they were working on a
he
on a
had
pl- on a
foreign
plot.
crypto accounts.
Yeah, but yeah.
And Netanyahu arrived, spoke to Congress that week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some people are saying, well, if they really want to kill Trump, I mean, they could just do it. But the weakness of this plot, waiting on a golf course on the 5th hole, he's spotted by people who live nearby. They alert Secret Service. He runs. It's weak, It's nothing like Crooks, which had its weaknesses too. But I think that may speak to how hard it is to do this now, given that you absolutely cannot have it look like it's more than one guy. It's going to have to look
Whatever happened to the heart attack
like
gun?
a lone gunman.
Whatever happened to the heart attack gun?
Yeah, I know. Why don't they do that or beam weapons? Whatever was used on. No, I'm serious. They can heart attack you.
Microwave.
I think that happened to Andrew Breitbart walking home from a restaurant in California, because he just drops dead of a heart attack. And anyway, there was maybe some insider leaked something later that pointed to something like that. But
so why not that?
There are ways and means. I mean, yeah.
So why not that? Does that mean that they want?
It's got to be a bullet.
It can't be natural causes. It has to stir up, social chaos. It has to be an assassination. It can't just. The point that suggests that that's part of it. That they're not really that concerned about Trump in terms of Trump getting another presidency.
It's only if we can kill Trump and
ignite,
use the energy from it into the direction we want.
Ignite a civil war in America. That's what we actually want to do. And Trump's just a means to that end. Because otherwise, like you said, like it's on fucking YouTube, the Church Committee and the CIA's in 1975?
2 or 3. Oh, yeah, maybe.
The guy holding up the gun, one of the senators holding up the gun. So you're saying this is like kind of like it fires a dart and it just dissolves and it can't be tracked afterwards.
Well, maybe it can be now.
Maybe, but maybe not. But that's
autopsies.
How long is that's 50 years ago? What new methods they have? Surely there's methods. It means the methods to actually kill someone without being.
His plane falls out of the sky. Yeah, something.
It wasn't.
Why don't they just do something, anything? Yeah.
Do what the Mossad do.
Have his TVs blow up.
Yeah, or there was a guy an Iraqi guy they wanted to take out, and they got him in a hotel. Like I think it was Vienna or maybe somewhere in Germany, and they came busted into his apartment, into his hotel room, and put some chloroform on him. Knocked him out. Drew a bath. I mean, old style drew, as in poured a bath. Put a load of ice into it, dropped him into it, and then administered a suppository that would rapidly increase his body temperature, I think, and in that way induce a heart attack.
Because, for the reasons you just gave, someone was able to figure that out. That's what happened to him.
Well, this was Viktor Ostrovsky, who was inside.
Revealing it later.
Revealing it afterwards. But they didn't figure it out. No, but that's one example of one way that, and then it was just, he had a heart attack and there's no way to tell he died of natural causes. Now, it's only the Mossad who would, take some pleasure in, administering suppositories to other men and stuff. But, so maybe the CIA wouldn't be into that kind of thing. They'd prefer a dart or something like that. But is that anti-Semitic, what I just said?
The dial went up a bit there, yeah.
Just peaked. Yeah, what was the name of his book, Ostrovsky's book,
By way of deception.
Was it just called By Way of Deception?
I
yeah.
think so.
It's in that book.
And then the second, and there was a number 2.
Yeah.
Follow. The first one was the best one, though.
Yeah, and it's in that book, yeah. And he's a former, unquestionably was a former
field agent, yeah.
Mossad agent, yeah. Anyway, so just by way of
well, there were
trivia.
650 attempts on Fidel Castro.
Yeah, and all of them failed. That's pretty bad, no?
It's so bad that it
makes you wonder.
conspiracy, you start to think second order. Well, they never really wanted to kill him.
Yeah. If you can't get it right after the 300th time, then you're probably not going to get it right.
But why keep trying?
Yeah, I don't believe 650. I think it's just, it depends. What do you mean?
It was from someone, that figure came from someone who was in his government.
It's a remarkable run of luck, no? In Castro's government, well, they might have a reason to kind of amplify the numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
For propaganda purposes, but it's a remarkable run of luck for Castro, right? 650 times. Yeah, well, that's it. What else is going on?
Well,
not much,
flooding.
A bit of flooding, come on.
Flooding. Unbelievable. Storm Boris came and went. That was pretty bad. At least on a par with the 1997 flooding in Poland, over Central Europe, Southern Poland, Czech Republic.
Mm-hmm.
Some places in southern Poland saw more than 16 inches of rain, thunderstorms, tornadoes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would just be another flood, but for the fact that there's so many happening, like Japan is now flooding, especially Western Japan. Ishikawa Prefecture has had more than 540 millimeters of rain, half a meter, in 72 hours until this morning in one city, Wajima. It's the heaviest continuous rainfall since comparative data became available in 1976, i.e. since records began. What's super, I'll just play a bit of footage here. So that's Western Japan, which is the Sea of Japan. So the part of Japan that faces South Korea, which is also having similar levels. It must be the same storm system. South Korea is flooding as well. So that's the city of Wajima, I think. Interesting side note about this part of Japan. This is the part of Japan in the west where there's got a little peninsula that sticks out up north, That is where the earthquake happened on New Year's Day, which is rare for the inside, the western half of Japan. That's the earthquake on New Year's Day that killed about 350 people.
Mm-hmm.
In the, I think it's called Noto, city up in that peninsula. Meanwhile, Shanghai's flooding nowhere near as bad as what you're seeing there and in Poland, where it rises up on the first floor. But it's the first direct hit from a typhoon in Shanghai in 75 years.
Mm-hmm.
500,000 people evacuated as of this morning. There's more. There's flooding. How localized this one is, I don't know, but there's lots of flooding footage still from Spain, from Mexico. And 2.5 meters of snow fell in parts of the Alps, probably as part of Storm Boris.
Yep.
What does that mean?
What does it mean?
In parts of the Austrian Alps, this means no one alive today has seen that much snow this early.
And you know what's happening?
Because it's raining a lot.
Correct. Very good. No, have a look at this. This relates to something we talked about last week, where parts of the Sahara Desert are turning green this month, even though it's not a one-off kind of thing. So parts of the Sahara Desert are dramatically greener than usual, while the Atlantic hurricane season has been slower than expected, and there's a correlation between those two. It turns out these two developments are both linked. In North Africa, some of the driest places on Earth have been seeing 5 times their average September rainfall. Now that sounds like Europe, right? So here we're talking about something that's happening in Northern Africa, Morocco, Algeria, and that's relatively not too far from Europe. 5 times the average rainfall. Flooding is affected 4 million people. Heavy rain and floods killed or displaced thousands. Okay, a northward shift in the region of clouds and rain that circles the Earth near the equator is responsible for the flooding and greening. In this area, called the Intertropical Convergence Zone, southern hemisphere winds blowing from the southeast converge with northern hemisphere winds blowing from the northeast. This combination of converging winds, strong sun, and warm ocean water leads to rising, moist air and constant clouds, showers and thunderstorms. The movement of the ITCZ north and south of the equator during the year is primarily driven by the difference in temperature between the northern and southern hemispheres. It drifts towards the warmer hemisphere, which means it resides north of the equator during the northern hemisphere summer, usually reaching its northernmost point in August or September. Scientists aren't sure exactly why the ITCZ has wobbled so far north this year. It could be because of the near-record warmth in the North Atlantic Ocean, increasing the temperature difference between the northern and southern hemispheres. And then there could also be a connection to global warming, heating in northern hemisphere, heating the northern hemisphere more than the southern hemisphere. There's more land than in the southern hemisphere in the north. That tends to warm up more, and hence it could push the ITCZ further north. The point being the ITCZ, which is basically a band of precipitation which produces the monsoons around the equator, around the level of the equator. So you're talking about equatorial Africa, basically all the rainforesty type places over in Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Amazon rainforest. And if you look it up, basically a lot of countries in these areas are all experiencing drought. Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, certain African countries along the equator and over in Asia as well are all experiencing drought, whereas slightly further north of those places, which are typically dry, arid areas, either desert or semi-arid, are having serious downpours, which means that this, basically the band of precipitation that circles the globe that causes monsoons, is moving north. Now, it's not moving north necessarily north kind of uniformly in one movement, but it's linked to a lot of other things, including the jet stream and all that kind of stuff. But basically what happens is, like they mentioned in that article, is that dry or moist, warm air move forward. You have a lot of evaporation and then a lot more precipitation further north. And the problem with that is that obviously that just causes more increased monsoon-like downpours further north than you would expect them to be, which is what we've been seeing in Europe. So it's kind of spottily here and there. It's not just, like I said, one uniform movement north of this band, but rather it reaching up in different places. And that's to do with, like I said, the jet stream and stuff. But the problem with the jet stream is that when the jet stream goes wonky, as it has gone wonky, and that's a technical term, wonky jet stream, it kind of meanders down. And when it meanders down from the north, it's usually around northern latitudes. When it meanders down, it pulls down cold air. So whenever you have a lot of warm, moist air coming up from the south, meeting cold air coming down because of the jet stream doing these meanders, you have a lot of storms as well, but they're usually consistent with a lot of downpour of rain. And if that cold air coming down is sufficient, it can obviously cause, and over higher altitudes, it's going to cause a lot of snowfall. But it can also, that movement of a lot more precipitation further north can eventually fall on the Arctic areas, basically, causing a lot of build-up of the ice sheets. The one thing they've been saying that are going to disappear very soon, well, if this dynamic continues, you'll probably have a significant and very quick build-up of ice sheets because of the precipitation basically falling further, a lot more precipitation falling further north, including in the Arctic areas. You'll have a significant build-up of ice sheets, and that then usually historically causes a new ice age. Kind of glacial rebound. We have a basically build up of the ice sheets, and
well, right now the Finns and the Norwegians are laughing at you because they're having a hot summer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
into October.
Yeah.
But yes, eventually, you can see it.
But that's an example of the movement north of overall global warming in the northern hemisphere, but also. That's part of it, like they mentioned in the article. That the warming of the northern hemisphere causes that band of precipitation to move toward further north. So the fact that the Swedes are getting getting a hot summer, and even still today, is the same reason that places like Poland are getting deluged.
Yeah.
It's the same cause.
So whose fault is it? The Swedes or the Poles?
It's the Israelis. Because they're behind the global warming. Things are getting pretty hot, no? You know when you're not allowed to say stuff because of anti-Semitism, that causes global warming. Because people like me get really frustrated and I start to boil. And I produce a lot more heat, and a lot more people are doing that as well, so they're giving off a lot more heat because they're getting angry. Because they're not allowed to speak the truth.
That may not be far off.
There's all these little individual, millions of individual little people giving off a lot more heat. That's causing global warming. That's causing this band of monsoon rain to move further north because it's attracted to the warmer hemisphere.
You see, that's a
But then the
man-made-
rain cooled us off, which is cool.
So it's all good in the end. It all balances out until everyone freezes.
It's a natural function until we all freeze. Yeah.
That makes more sense to me for the man-made input to this energy system than y'all driving too much. And we know our dear leaders don't believe it because they buy mansions next to beaches and fly to conferences to lecture about not flying anymore.
Yeah.
So that's obviously not. But it's such a twisted story, isn't it? How do you unpack this? Because anyone on the right is saying, what? It's just weather, mate. It's just weather. It's fine.
Just weather, mate.
No, it's not. There's something strange going on. But it's not man-made global warming as they're describing it. But I could believe that there's something to do with people's the population's psychic state of mind.
Could well be. In which case, everybody needs to be responsible about how they're contributing to the weather.
So what can they do then? They can speak the truth.
No, cold therapy.
Cold therapy.
Yeah. Ice baths and things like that. No suppositories though.
That'll reduce global warming.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Where do you stand on meat? Because they're telling us that we have to stop eating meat to save the planet.
Stop eating meat to save the planet.
Or reduce your meat consumption.
I only eat anti-Semitic cows.
What?
Huh?
You only eat what?
Anti-Semitic cows.
Cows.
Anti-Semitic ones, yeah.
No, didn't get it.
Me neither. They don't contribute to global warming.
Okay. Macron finally has a government.
Yeah.
It might last a week.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, riots erupted in Martinique over cost of living.
Yeah.
It's interesting. In the space of, it was already this year that happened in Nouvelle-Calédonie, the Pacific. At least, I mean, Martinique, France, Paris doesn't probably care much about, but there's rumors though in France that there's an impeachment process underway actually against Macron. The left wants to impeach him, and they're going to have a vote, but it's unlikely. It's already a first in the Cinquième République that there's going to be an impeachment, but they need to get like 2/3 majority vote, and it looks like Le Pen's party is not going to vote to impeach Macron. I don't understand their strategy there, but French politics is just, it's really opaque. Sometimes things you expect to happen don't, and vice versa. Everyone agrees they want Macron gone, but then there's actually a chance to impeach him, and they're like, no, we're not going to do that. Okay. So.
Yeah. It's probably complicated. All sorts of politicking and manoeuvring going on, as usual. A nest of vipers.
That's all I got for this week.
Yeah.
Any other business? Apparently Denmark had no summer, but an enormous amount of rain.
A lot of places.
Yeah, I don't think, yeah. I think the heat was higher up. Well, it's only recent. It's only recent that the Scandinavian countries had high temperatures because of this storm system in Europe and the jet stream coming down. Okay, I've got something else actually. This is a moment where Joe gets to say, "I told you so."
Not again.
Like all of 3 years ago when the Ukraine war started and all the way up to now. This is Hungary's foreign minister saying the quiet part out loud. All of Europe does business with Russia. EU economic cooperation with Moscow continues despite the sanctions. Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó said.
Well, yes, that's just I've told you. So this has been in the news for a long time, although the Western media obviously have played it down and stuff, but like they've all been buying Russian oil up the wazoo, Russian oil and gas up the wazoo, just rebranded. A lot of it goes to China, a lot of it goes to India, and they buy it from India, and they don't give a shit. I mean,
they buy Russian everything.
It's ridiculous.
Everything.
Yeah.
Fertilizer,
there literally were no sanctions in the way that they spoke about them. There were no sanctions on Russian oil or gas. It's like I'm not going to buy it directly from Russia. I'm going to buy it through a middleman. That's a sanction. It's bullshit. These people are not serious people. They're bullshit artists. But then, what's new, you know? Anyway, a termite walks into a bar and asks, "Is the bartender here?"
Did he have any luck?
Huh?
Yeah.
That was it. Did you not get it? Neil, it's too fast for you. I'll do it again. Termite walks into a bar and asks, "Is the bartender here?"
Ah, Jesus.
Took you a while. It's all right, Neil. It's all right. You need more peptides. Anyway, on that too complex for Neil joke note, well, leave it there for this week, folks. Thanks for listening, watching. Thanks for commenting. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week with another one. So until then, have a good week. See you later.
Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.
Can't stop the signal now.